Assalamu alaikum everybody. Welcome back in a new video. Operator overloading. So in this video we're going to explore operator overloading. What does it mean and how do we use it? Okay, first of all, what is overloading? If you remember, we have taken functions overloading, constructor overloading, and the overloading word means that we can use the same thing but in a different way. In terms of functions, we were using the same name of the function but with different signatures, so we can make use of that function in different ways. The same goes for the constructor, so we can use more than one constructor but to serve different purposes. But now we have the overloading operators, which means what is the operators that we have? We have the arithmetic operators when we add values, uh, like adding, subtracting, multiplying, and division. And we also have the comparison operators, the equal, the not equal, the greater than, the less than, and so on. And we have more. But for now, let me start with the normal way of adding using the operators. And like I am 100% sure that most of you know this, but let's recap, do a quick revision of it. So let me do an integer. I will call it x and I'll give it 10. Then now I'll create another variable called y and then I'll give it 5. Then now if I make c and then I say x plus y and then I do c out and then I see out c. Okay, now if I save and compile, most of you can know what do I mean here and you can anticipate the outcome or the output, right? It's going to be 15. Perfect. But like, how is this operation happening? By default, the compiler knows what do I mean by integer because x here is an integer and y here is an integer. So I am adding integer to another integer and I am storing the outcome or the result value into C, and the compiler knows what do I mean here. But do we have the same behavior when it comes to objects? The answer simply is no. So for example, let me start creating a class. I will call this class, I don't know how to write class anymore, class, and then I'll call it number, and then inside this class I will just make an integer and call it n, for example, and then let me do a constructor, public constructor, I'll name it number, and then I will say integer number, and then I'll give it a default value. I'll make it 0. Okay, now inside this I'll say n equal to number. Again, why n equal to number? Because I need my variable here in n, and then number is the parameter that I receive from the constructor. Okay, now what if I go and create two objects out of this here? What if I do number and then I say n1 and then n2? Okay, so actually let me give n1 a 10 and then let me give n2 a 15, let's say. Or let's say, no, let me make it 5. Let me make it 5. Tamam. Okay, so now I have what? Let me actually make display void display, and then inside this display function I am going to do cout and then number and then n. Okay, and then n. Perfect. So now if I am going to say n1.display, I am going to see 10, right? So let me save first. Let me save and then compile. as you can see, number 10. Okay, now what if I go and try to do the same? As you can see here, I have x and I have y, and I have c that have the result. Okay, x plus y will be stored in c. What if I say number, in this case, instead of integer, because my class called number, right? Number, and then let me make it razor, anything. Okay, and then I will say n1 plus n2. Now it will give me an error. Look, it's on the add. It says no operator matches these operands. What does this mean? Okay, imagine for example, if I have more data members, integer, age, let's say string, whatever. Okay, so now I'm dealing with an object that is holding all of these guys. So when I say n1 plus n2, what do I mean? Which one of them? Okay, so I didn't specify which one of them I want to add, right? So this is when I need to overload the operator. Okay, in this case I need to overload the operator. I'm telling the compiler, if I am using the plus between two objects, okay, I want you to do this thing. Okay, but like how? First of all, if you want to do the operator, what you need to do usually, you need a data type. Okay, in this case number. Okay, I'll tell you why. I'm making the return type is number of this object, and then I write operator, and then like the symbol or the operator that I want, and in this case I want plus. I hope I'm doing the syntax correct. And then inside, then here, okay, now think of it this way. When you do this function, whenever I do this plus, it means that I am triggering this function. How? Because the compiler will come to n1, it will find it's an object, and then it come to n2, it's an object, and then plus. Okay, can I add them? The compiler by default will say no, I cannot add them. Then it will think, do I have an operator overloading to do this task for me? If yes, then this function is going to get triggered, otherwise it will give an error. Okay, now the first object is always going to call this function. So by default, if I say cout and then n, I am going to get 10. Why 10? Because n is holding 10, which is this one. I don't need these two for now. Okay, so this is why. And then for the second one, I want to pass it, because by default the second one, like the object on the right side, will be passed to the function or to the overloaded function. Okay, so now what I need to do, I need to say number. Okay, and then here let's make it object. Let's say object, obj. Okay, then now inside this function, actually look, it's plus, but actually I want to show you this. I can do whatever I want. I like, it's plus, but I can subtract, I can divide, I can do cout. It doesn't matter what is the operator, I can control what inside this function. But like it wouldn't make sense to add a plus operator and then I subtract or I divide. Yani it doesn't make sense, right? It against the purpose of using the operator. So now, I like, just for the sake of learning, let me delete those guys. I don't want them. Now, like, look, I will delete the display as well. The only thing I have now is n1 plus n2. So if what I claimed is correct, then this function is going to be triggered. And what do I have inside this function? I only have one statement, which is the cout, and now it should output n. And what is n? As we said, n is this one, and I can access it because n1 is the one who's calling this function, so it should it's supposed to show 10, right? So now let me save. Let me compile. Okay, I'm getting an error. Non-void function, not return a value. Anonymous, this pointer. Where I'm getting this from? Is it here? Same. Non-void function doesn't return. Okay. Yeah, of course. Yeah, so look, by the way, I do these videos like directly without preparing. It make a lot of sense. I'm returning number, but here I'm not doing anything. I need to return something at least. Let me return. Now it connected to what? Now it connected to this. For now, let me just return this, which means what? If you have seen the videos of this operator, I will only return this, which means the same object, because I don't want to do anything yet. I just want to show you that this statement is going to be executed. Let me clear the terminal. Now I'm going to compile it, and then let me run it. See, it's 10 here. I'm showing 10, which means, if you can guess, like, think with me. Now I'm returning this. So this means that the outcome of these two will be this, because in the plus operator I'm returning this, which is the current object. So now if I say result dot display, what would it return? What do you think? Guess. Yeah, it would show 10 as well, because here I'm returning asterisk this, which means I'm returning the same object or the current object, which is n1. So result and n1 will be basically a different copy of each other. So now let me do this, compile it, and then show it. See, number and 10. Sorry, there is no inline here. I will do the inline and then save. Now I compile. Yeah, so as you can see, number and 10, but this is not what we want. Like, we want to go, and basically we don't want to confuse the user. We need to follow the rules. So basically here, what I need to do the addition. But if in the exam a question comes and say do overloaded a plus operator and or addition, so it's gotta be a requirement. So what, for example, if I have 10 data members and it says, okay, only add these kind 3 of them, you do this. But in my case, I only have n, so basically I'm going to add them. But how? So now what I'm receiving an object. This object is n2, and I have an access directly to the elements or the data members of n1. So now what I need to do, I need another object or third object that I make temporarily, so I return it back. So think of it as third one. Now I say number, and then let's say temp, which means temporarily. Okay, so now it's fine. If I give it 0, or I don't give it anything because I have made a 0 by default, I made in the constructor, so in this case it will work. Then now I say temp dot n. As you can see, I'm creating a new object called temp. So this temp is going to hold the result of the addition for 2 objects, and then I will say equal, then what? Then n. Now this n is belong to n1, because n1 is the one who's calling the object, the current one. and then plus opt dot what dot n again. So now I'm accessing 5. Okay, so the result of these two will be, here is 10 plus the 5, this one and this one, and then the result will be stored where? In n of temp, this object. Now after I finish this thing, I should return what? I should return temp, right? So now after I returning temp, now my function is complete. Now if I run this code, I should see 15, right? Because if what I did is correct, then this would be 10 and this would be 15, and then the result will be stored in temp.n. Then I am going to return it in the temp. Now let me compile the code and then let me run it. So as you can see 15, which means my function now is working. So let's recap again. For the overloaded operators, the compiler by default doesn't know how to add objects to each other. It doesn't know how to subtract objects. It doesn't know how to see out objects. Like I'm going to do some examples in the next videos about how to see out objects. But basically, any complex operation or something that you want to do with the object that the compiler doesn't know by default. Okay, so now what I need to do, I have two objects. I want to add some certain data members of them, depends on the requirement, and then by default the compiler do this thing. N1 is an object, N2 is an object. N1 is going to call this. Why? Because here I'm using the plus, so it's going to trigger this function. Then inside this function I can do whatever I want, but I will go with the make sense scenario, which means I want to add n with the other n, which is 10 and 5. But to do this, I need a temporary variable to hold this value. So this is why I made the return type of this operated overloaded function return a number data type, and then I need to create plus object here. I give it this value and then I return it back, so it comes and gets stored in result, and this is why when I do result.display, it will show me the correct answer. This is so far what you need to know in this video. In the next video, I'm going to solve a few questions trying to clarify how to use it with different operators. And there is 3 ways, as far as I understood, there's 3 ways of dealing with the overloaded operators. And yeah, basically, see you in the next video.